Hello tankers and tankettes, and welcome to a video where I'm going to talk about two different things. The first is the TS-5, the vehicle you're seeing here, and the second is going to be my impressions on the changed and, well, improved matchmaking that we now have in World of Tanks. So the TS-5, this is a tier 8 premium tank destroyer, and probably the most eye-catching thing overall about this is that it has crazy good DPM. It is identical to the Jagdtiger 8.8, which makes it joint second best among all tier 8 tank destroyers for damage per minute. The thing that maybe makes that seem a little bit OP compared to the Jagdtiger is that compared to the 240 Alpha with the 8.8 centimeter gun, this is a 120mm gun with 400 Alpha. It's the same gun you find on the T28 and the T34. In fact, the T28 Prot as well. So this is a very punchy gun for that much DPM. However, compared to the T28, there are some distinct downsides. The handling is a bit derpy in comparison. 0.44 accuracy especially is not good for a tank destroyer, so although you can pump out those shots like nobody's business, if you're only pumping them out at long ranges, there's a very good chance that you're not going to hit a very high percentage of them. It's also got worse gun depression. The armour is both better and worse at the same time. The cheeks, the sides of the curved armour around where the gun is, and I think the top of that area as well, is actually really strong, better than the T28's frontal armour, but the lower glacis is weaker. I think it was something like 180mm effective at its worst. So if you can hit this thing in the chin, essentially, just as you do with the T28, you've got a pretty good chance of penning. And this game here, in fact, it's going to be quite unrepresentative of my overall experience with the armour, especially as almost all of the ammo that gets shot at me is going to be premium ammo. There is so much premium spam in this game, and in other games I've faced the same thing and died a hell of a lot quicker. And yeah, that's a bit of a spoiler, but you can see exactly what is happening right now. This is a full-on rush by a whole group of enemy top tiers, and it's only me and the pair of 30s that are really here to do anything about it. Those French wheeled vehicles are so annoying for that, but anyway, never mind. Somebody else's problem. I can't possibly turn around to take care of that. So yeah, on flat ground that chin is a problem. And if you're trying to use your gun depression, which is I think 7 degrees, it's definitely a problem. But if you can actually back up to the point where you're going to be using your gun elevation instead, which is what I do in this game, then it actually becomes stronger. And that definitely helped me survive a lot longer than I otherwise might have. So that's one of the defenders down. I'm already up to 1500 damage done. My own gameplay in this one was thoroughly panicked. I'm not going to pretend this was a particularly good game on my part. Partly I'm showing you this one because it was the ace tanker, and I probably was helped out a bit by the fact that people are still grinding for this. I'm sure people are just about getting to the stage of finishing the set of missions to get this for free. But I used a 30% coupon and basically bought it for the same price as a regular tier 8. And I don't really regret spending that money. That's the first money I've spent in World of Tanks for quite a long time. And it's not a bad machine. For situations like this where it's point blank range and they are really having difficulty penning my weak spots. I mean, I don't think anyone was trying to hit the commander's hatch, which you can pen. It's only about 120mm effective. If you can't hit that lower front plate, the lower glacis, you can easily go for the commander's hatch. But my time is just about due at this point. The SU has shots into my side armour, which is very weak. It might even be worse than the T28. And so that's my game done. But in that 4 and a bit minutes, I managed to rack up just shy of 4,000 damage done. And over 3,500 bounced damage, not including what went into the tracks. But I would like to absolutely emphasise, most of my games were not like this. This is absolutely the most damage I bounced in any of the games I've played in this so far, because they were shooting in more or less the correct area, although some of them were shooting the cheeks and it was never going to pen even with the with premium ammo. But because I was able to back up and have a much flatter angle on that lower glacis, that premium ammo became almost useless. Almost useless. I still got penned and still died eventually. It is still a relatively slow tank destroyer without a turret. It's not really any different than the T-28 in that regard. It's actually a bit faster. It's got like an extra 4 kilometers an hour over the T-28, which you do notice on flat ground, but it's got worse horsepower per ton. I think it's got a worse, it's either a weaker engine or it's heavier, so you will notice that when you're going up slopes more than the T-28. But overall, it's not like it's completely immobile. It's just I had lots of situations where I ended up being alone and surrounded, and because I didn't have a turret, that was that. It does not turn particularly quickly. This game does give you, however, a flavour of what that DPM can do. That is a lot of damage for 4 minutes. In fact, it was even less than 4 minutes because, of course, we waited for them to rush down that corner and run into me and the 230s. The rest of this game is going to be fairly tense and fairly close. I mean, we blunted that attack and we took out arguably their most dangerous tanks. So the remaining tanks do have a shot at bringing this home, but whether they actually can or not remains to be seen. So my overall takeaway on the TS-5 is that it's decent. The DPM is going to be overpowered sometimes, but only sometimes. It will highly depend on the situation. It's almost like the British tank destroyers, where you need that ability to lay down the continuous rate of fire to really get the most out of it. And because I was close range, and despite my somewhat derpy gunnery, my derpery gunnery is what I was trying to say there, well done brain, I was able to get a lot of damage out in a very short space of time, but a lot of games won't be like that. They really won't. If you can get the chance to lay down that fire, then yes, the DPM is really very good, and it becomes far more effective for that DPM than the Jagdtiger 8.8. You maybe won't get to permatrack people like you can with the Jagdtiger, but you saw firsthand quite how much damage I could lay into people. As a grindable tank, I think it's actually well worth going for. I mean, I think the marathon is well over halfway done at this point. I can't remember when it finishes exactly, but this marathon overall has also been quite good. I mean, it's been fairly reasonable compared to some of the other ones they've done. A good point of comparison would be the Exeter missions in World of Warships, where a lot of people struggled to do the very last mission because it had a pretty high requirement. It was something like 7 different battle honours, or I'm struggling to think of the words now, 7 different awards that you needed to get the final stage, and that was for a tier 5 cruiser. This would be the equivalent of like a tier 8 premium cruiser that you were grinding out. Not a tier 8 battleship, because that would be, I guess, the equivalent of a, you know, heavy tank, but anyway. So yeah, overall, I think it's pretty decent for what it is, but what it is still a relatively slow tank destroyer, so do bear that in mind. So, running out of time in this replay, I'm going to have to very quickly talk about the matchmaking changes, but I think I can squeeze that into the next 2 minutes or so. So, yeah, that's the other thing I wanted to mention, and overall, wow, what a difference it makes not being constantly bottom tier. This is a change that Wargaming should have made, what, like 2 years ago at this point? When did they start to introduce the 357 template and all that jazz? It must be going on 2 years, if not longer. Wargaming sometimes takes a very long time to get round to making needed changes to the game, and it is very noticeable. I mean, Circon was pointing this out. I've been platooning with Circon, by the way. You know, that's a thing we haven't done in a long time, because it makes the matchmaking even worse, and it's now bearable. And yeah, he was saying how stark it is when you still get those +2 games, which of course you can still do, even though they are now rarer, and you can absolutely end up feeling still utterly useless and powerless in those +2 situations. It's just they occur so much less frequently now. It's actually made World of Tanks playable for me outside of front lines. And I've been able to platoon up with Circon and other people and play and not just get consistently shafted. And I've tested it out at tier 4. Circon's been playing a lot of tier 5 and tier 6 recently. I've been also testing out a bit with tier 7 and tier 8. And some tiers at some times of day are worse than others. And also bear in mind, this is me talking about the EU server, which has a pretty decent population. It might be worse on the NA and the Asian servers due to smaller server population, and that might just be unavoidable, unfortunately. But at least on EU, and I'm sure on Russia as well, it is a massive breath of fresh air. Tanks feel so much more effective. Even if, I mean, a lot of the games have been +1. There's also been a fair proportion of top tier games, but even just being in +1 games makes such a difference for so many tanks. So, big thumbs up to Wargaming. It's maybe not quite as big or as good a change as they could have made, but absolutely it's welcome, and absolutely it has made the game so much more playable again than it was. I mean, I'm still at the stage of I'm not playing that much solo, and I would much prefer to play in platoons with the people that I know are going to be semi-decent. Although part of that is also because I'm not that good at the game, and you know, it helps if there's someone to carry me. But in this case, with that huge damage output, I still managed to be top of the team. I think I just chunked enough damage off enough dangerous tanks that it then made winning from that point possible. But yeah, I'm not going to pretend this was my best ever game. Definitely not. So yeah, that was an ace tanker. As I said, it's not probably going to have been that difficult for me to get at that point. I'm sure it'll be harder and harder as people actually start to play the thing and up the XP requirements. But overall, if you can get it in the right situation, like any turretless, reasonably slow tank destroyer, it can be pretty effective. And these days, with the new matchmaking, you can even have a reasonably good chance of not being stuck in tier 10 games over and over and over. Although with this 120mm, with the considerably better penetration than the Jagdtiger 8.8, you know, the T-34 is a tank I still sort of enjoy because you very rarely need to reach for the Prem ammo, and that's the same for this thing. So even in a tier 10 game, that 248 average AP pen would still be reasonably effective, but because you can be top tier that much more often, it's not bad. It's not bad at all. So hopefully you have enjoyed my not at all comprehensive thoughts on both the TS-5 and the new improved matchmaking. If you have, you can do all the usual things down underneath the video, and of course, as always, stay tuned for more.